Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it.
Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Scoreboard Media. Scoreboard Media works with high schools across the country to run professional sponsorship programs on their LED scoreboards. Whether you already have LED and you just want to supercharge the revenue, or you want to use sponsorship revenue to buy new LED video scoreboards, Scoreboard Media can help. They work with sponsors and advertisers locally, regionally, and nationally who want to connect with your school's community. Email info@scoreboardmedia.com to start the conversation and see what's possible.
And everything we're talking about here is culture. Culture is not just a slogan, something on a t-shirt, a hashtag. All those things are fine. There's nothing wrong with them, but it's the 1,000 little things that you do, little conversations, drills, sayings, all that stuff. So for you, how does culture drive performance in your program?
I mean, it affects everything, right? Shaka Smart, I saw this before the tournament, had a great definition for it, which is culture is how we act, how we interact, and how we respond. Those three things. And that stuck with me. Culture is how we act, interact, and respond. And so, I mean, if your program, like coaches, players, everyone, if that is all moving in sync, if we're acting, and that's not just basketball, right? Like that's for us. We got guys who live in dorms, apartments, right? I mean, we're trusting that. I mean, you're in the same position when guys go home too, right? We think we have way more control over their day than we actually do. But if we're acting, interacting, and responding appropriately, then things are moving the right direction. And so culture can be, it's a buzzword, but making sure that we're defining what culture is for us, and also making sure that our players know the standards. Man, it affects winning, I think, more than I know that we say it, like, do we really believe it? When you think about how you spend your time as a basketball coach, right, and what we emphasize, how much time are you placing on building culture? Because it really does drive performance. And if we're not ever touching on it, if it's just in the first of the year meeting with our team, hey, here are the three things that are important or whatever, and then you're never referencing that or talking more about it, you have to do those things and emphasizing it daily.
Yeah. And your culture, your standards, your pillars, which I think so many times I've had some coaches almost separate the two. We have our standards, and then we have our pillars or our culture almost. And so, but I think if you separate those, if they're all the same, I kind of view them mainly as the same things. I think easily say, how does standards drive performance? And I think we could arrive at the same answers that we're talking about. But I think it's good to look at them and make sure that they are not one way or the other completely relational based, and don't cross over to training and floor and team timeouts, competitiveness, like everything we do on the floor. Make sure that it covers that arena, but then also it's not so far. So look, I've had some cultures that, like, part of our culture is we play fast. I love that. Like that's great. That's a pillar of ours. Okay, how does play fast also translate to how we treat each other in the locker room? So, like, I think that's the beauty of being able to choose these standards and pillars is we want ideals that cover everything that we do, all of the how we act, interact, respond, no matter where we are. That's my thought.
If you're not careful with standards, pillars, all of that stuff, you can end up having 4 standards and 10 rules and 6 pillars. And you ask your guys, like, hey, what are we, and they're like, we have 35 things that like, there's no way your guys know what's important to you when it's 35 different things. And so just really like, again, if you can get the crossover that you're mentioning, then you just have 3 or 4 or 5 things that work for on the floor and off the floor. You don't have 30 things that the guys have to know. So again, just like everything, I've stolen this, but we say EDGE in our program, EDGE, and I love acronyms. So, it's going to have an acronym, but we break every huddle by saying EDGE. And so we want to play with an edge. I would like to think that I was a competitive player. I was a undersized, unathletic. I just had to, so I had to have an edge, a little bit. So we want to play with an edge, coach with an edge. Then at Harding, we have a great setup to where we have fantastic campus support, community support, and we want to use a home court edge, So those are the 3 things that we talk about. But we also, edge is energy, discipline, grit, and excellence. And so if you were to just ask anybody in our program, hey, what is y'all's thing? What is your standard? Then they would say edge, and then they would know what those 4 letters mean. Energy, okay, what type of energy are we talking about? I need to have high energy. Like, I need to be a positive. When I come in the office, not that every day's a holiday or every day's the best day, but we want to be around positive, energetic people. We don't want to be the energy vampires or the Eeyores or whoever, but energy, discipline, grit, and we break all of those things down and what that looks like on the floor and off the floor. And then that's it, right? And we say edge, and then, but like, there should be, and hopefully no confusion over what are the 4 important things in our program and what that means, basketball and non-basketball.
Yeah. I mean, simple wins, right? Like, clarity is really what allows players to own the style of play, the culture that they're in. Complicated systems are, I think, just the more room for slippage and for mistakes. And for people to maybe start to think, it's kind of like with shot selection. If I say only take good shots, well, 5 different people thinking good is different things. So we have to be on the same page. And the more clarity with our culture, the more chance, the higher chance of all of them being in line with it. I want you to check out, you probably already have, Make the Big Time Where You Are by Frosty. He has a whole chapter on the edge and getting athletes to the edge. And so, one, because it's your acronym and you break, but it's also probably a great way to look at the edge. And he says it's a 3-sided coin. And I'm blanking on what the 2 sides are right now, but the 3rd side is the edge. And how do you, as a player, how do you train at that edge? Because most players are on this side or that side, but we need to get them there. So great little, I wish I could describe it better, but a great chapter. Coach, before the speed round, where I get to know you even better, I'd love to know a little bit about how you and your program use social media to enhance it, to make your players feel special. How do you guys utilize it?
I'll start at the very beginning. So I grew up, maybe as social media was becoming, I'm young enough to know that, like, there are lots of coaches older than me who, are unfamiliar, don't know how to navigate, whatever. I see why it is what it is and why it's important. And so when I got into the college world, I was a women's basketball assistant in college for 8 years, okay, before this job. And so 5 of those were at Harding. I was at Arkansas State and Abilene Christian as well. And so I want to go back to Harding because this was when teams started using social media for promoting, for recruiting, for all of those things. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I needed to do it. And I knew that it was important. And so I had the best plan that I could come up with, and I worked on executing that plan. And I was like, what did I get myself into? This is not my world. And so I found a marketing PR person on campus, on Harding's campus, who was a student who was great at it. She was phenomenal. And so she said, hey, I want to help with women's basketball. This is what I'm good at, and this will be my career. Can I help? Yes, please. And so I handed her, here's my social media plan for the year. Here's what we've done. Here's what we're going to do. And she looked at it and ripped it up in front of me and was like, we are not doing any of that. And I was like, I've hired the right person. No, it was great because I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew to do it, you know? And she taught me a lot, a college student who was just like, you know, we need to do it. And something's better than nothing, but this is not much better than nothing either. So I'm going to improve it. And she did a phenomenal job. And she's fantastic in that career. And so I get to Arkansas State after Harding, and it's COVID, and colleges had all of these support staff positions that maybe handled, you know, social media, you know, all the, you know, kind of just ops type things. Well, COVID cut a lot of those positions. So we had no one really running social media. And so my head coach there, I kept saying, when are we going to get a GA to do, you know, and finally he just goes, he was tired of me bugging him, no doubt. He goes, hey, if you care about it so much, why don't you just do it, you know? And this had been, you know, we thought after COVID, it's like, when are we going to get these spots back and the athletic department's, you know, moving slowly or whatever. So that was the best advice he could have given me, which is, if you care about it so much, why don't you just do it? Because I knew it needed to be done, and I was just waiting for us to have the position to hire someone to do it. And so I did it. And again, it wasn't great, but I had learned from my Harding experience what not to do, and I didn't do that. And so then when I went to Abilene Christian, one of my biggest job responsibilities was like social media coordinator. I mean, I was an assistant coach, but I ran our social media. And
Wow.
what's easy to think about is, had I not had that conversation with the Harding student, you know, several years prior of like, this is terrible and here's how you can do it better, I wouldn't have been ready for that position, you know, 6-7 years down the road. And so at ACU, I ran social media. And again, it's not like I'm an expert on it by any means, but I have tried to educate myself on it. But I understand the value of it and why it's necessary and all that. So when I got hired at Harding, it was like, hey, you know, if I'm thinking about a program in terms of like different boxes, and so you have your recruiting box and your academic box and your fundraising box and your alumni relations box, and then the basketball box is a pretty important box, and all, you know, you got all these boxes, and we want to be the best in our league in all of these areas. Social media is one of those things where we need to be doing it at a very high level, because if you're not promoting your team and your players, you know what your players are going to do? They're going to go find someone else who will promote.
Because they're watching.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so that has been, we have a graduate assistant who actually came with me from Abilene Christian. Duncan Bacon is his name. And Duncan, again, he's 23 years old. He was a student manager for the ACU men's team. So I didn't work with him directly, but he, over COVID, like, he had a lot of downtime. He's just a self-taught social media. You know, he can do really anything we ask of him, but he just learned, it was a skill where he just goes, I'm going to learn how to do this. And so going back to, if I could just give young coaches any piece of advice, have a skill that separates you from other people. And one of the big things that all college program needs, they need somebody who can make graphics, you know, produce content. Everyone's looking for that. So if you can learn how to do that, man, that can just, on a resume, I mean, that can separate you. So I just, you know, social media, how do we use it? I mean, it's necessary, and you need to do it well. And so that's not a very specific answer, but it's something that every week we talk about. What are we doing, and how are we doing it, and how can we do this better? And it's at the near the top of our list in terms of running a program.
Man, I think there's a lot of gold in what you said, and great reminders for coaches to think about. I heard from a podcast, Hallie, this must have been, it wasn't even 2010 yet. Like, it was before that, but I heard a podcast that said, if you're not actively using social media to promote your programs, then you're behind. And I remember thinking that was 2008 or 9, like, I don't want to be behind.
Yeah.
Just because we don't like something, like there's a lot of about social media I don't like. I don't like how the fear of missing out, how that creates that in our kids, or even myself. If I see our staff doing something, like our athletic staff, and I'm not in it, what the crap? Like, what does that mean? You know, and I feel that, but it also, like the way that it does promote comparing and how it can steal joy. And so there's so much, but also the way it helps players now with recruiting, it's the avenue. It's the avenue, and it's a lot of times the first point of contact for guys. The way that we can control the narrative a little bit of what people see show off our culture. It's more than just a score graphic from it. It's letting people inside. Like probably today, maybe tomorrow, the Lion Games highlight from this week is going to be out there. I'm going to spend the time to put that together. We asked that question: does this lead to winning? I don't know. I don't know if me putting this video, me doing these graphics leads to winning. I don't think it hurts. I think if culture is everything that you do, it's a part of that. And do we want our culture to be good? Do we want to be excellent? Or do we just want to say this is something we have to do? You mentioned a plan that person gave you and that you've had. Is that something that you have? Do you have something actually written out that you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, so I just and I didn't, again, I'm not tech savvy. I've learned, so I just have a Google sheet. And you know what I did? I put January 1 on there, and then I just went all the way through December 31st, because a lot of the things that we do are, I mean, a kid's birthday in our program, right?
Yeah.
That's not change every year. A holiday graphic, that's not going to change. There are certain things that each year I'm gonna have these things on the calendar, and then you just fill in from there. Like, I mean, all right, how many people are in your program? So,
Overall?
Yeah, overall.
Yeah, I mean 33.
So 30
High school.
And so with 33, I mean, I can figure out how to stretch 33 people. I mean, my mind immediately goes to, if we do this for everyone, then all I need is 10 recurring things. I wouldn't have this many things, but 10 recurring things where I highlight all 33 people throughout the year. A birthday is one of those 10 things. Get to know is one of those 10 things. There's different things that you can do to just say, and at ACU, we had a one-word graphic, a John Gordon one-word graphic. And so there were those things, right? I can make that stretch, but we're also putting out things and giving people an inside look at our players. So and it started with just learning what a Google Sheet was, because I didn't know. I was like, what is a Google Sheet? But then making that, for the whole year, getting that calendar, and then it's all digital. Everyone can access that on our staff or whatever, and then we can just update stuff as we go, as people move on or graduate or, whatever. I have that, and I'm definitely happy to share it too.
Awesome. And just to kind of piggyback off of that, every year when we have our coaches meeting here at Faith, one of our school's kind of social media person comes in and says, hey, send me stuff, anything that you make or whatnot. It's every year. She will comment like, I don't expect you to do as much as boys basketball, but send me things. I don't ever want other sports to feel bad, but it is a commitment that I've made, and at Faith, all my assistants are part-time. So they have other jobs in a real life. I'm the only one who sit here, but I also have, and this is to take some of the pressure off of coaches that do have what I would call real coaching jobs, where they teach also. Like I've got off periods in study halls outside of a PE and basketball. So in season, and I don't know if this shocks people or not, but it's at least an hour a day working on graphics through Photoshop and then putting things out. I have a list and order that I do in season, but I don't, it's mainly we'll do JV scores and a graphic for them, but varsity gets the bulk of it. But you know what? Like, why not go do it year round? Let the parents see what we're doing, because if my son goes home and his mom will ask him every day, and I'm standing right there, she'll say, hey, what'd you do in basketball today? Or how was it? It was good. She'll like, what'd you do? I don't know. I'm like, landed. Like, I was right there, buddy. We did a ton of stuff. So like, if that's happening in my house, that's the message. But you have to be organized with it, because just like the podcast, if you're going to commit to doing it, then you've got to stay consistent. But I do think it's something that it matters.
Canva is really easy. That's what I learned how to use at Arkansas State, when my boss was like, if you care, then figure it out. And I was like, well, Canva's pretty simple. And then when I got to ACU, my boss was like, do you know how to use Photoshop? No, but I'm willing to learn. And so what I did was, with both programs, was 45 minutes a night. I just put a timer on my phone. I set my phone on the kitchen counter, and I was uninterrupted 45 minutes. I'm going to play around with Photoshop, and I'm going to learn how to do it. I'm going to play around with Canva. And that took maybe a month of 45 minutes every day And then you get it down, at least on a basic level, and then it's way less time, but learning, but you still have to put the time into making graphics. And so as a Division I assistant outside of basketball practice or games and recruiting, if you were going, hey, how did you spend your time as a social media coordinator? 80% of my time was thinking about social media, and so as a Division I assistant coach. And so there are people on staffs who, again, if you can just create gain that skill, then there's room for you somewhere.
Yeah, and just to kind of finish up this part of the talk, I think you're right on the money. Even at the high school level, I have felt like the next assistant that I'm able to go after and find, a big part of that job is going to be ability to use, promote, be creative with social media. Because here's what I can do. I do birthdays. I could do get-to-knows. I can do all these things, but I'm not fun and I'm not creative. Meaning and I don't know what emojis and what's cool and this or that. And for any high school coaches that do want to know to me, the gold standard of what a high school social media what it could look like, Midland Christian School, Trent Langford, there, the assistant for Chris Ryburn, the dude's on another level. So there are programs out there doing it. I'm trying to do my very, very best. But if you are, like that guy said, if you're thinking it's not important or that's just not something you care about, you may be behind.
And if you're thinking about just an easy, small win to make your program better, if you're not doing social media at all or not doing it well, it does not take a whole lot to make pretty big gains in that area. That's an easy space to go, here's how our program's going to improve over the next 12 months. And I'm going to develop this skill or hire somebody who has the skill. And then our program's going to be in a better spot 12 months from now and then continue to grow in other areas.
And I think don't be fooled for us not to think that other programs and other families don't also see what we're doing. I had one of our competing high schools years ago, a parent came up and just said, hey, I know we don't go here. I just love following your guys and stuff. It does matter. And it is, at the end of the day, it only costs our time.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.